if folks want more detail about Central African Republic updates, we have the best information we could put together yesterday in an article pinned to the top here. Alex has been tweeting about it. There's also an official document that's pinned to the top. So got some decent resources. Obviously, trying to get some folks on the ground to talk about it.
Well, so as we get Clement connected, Fode, why don't we start with your initial reactions? Do you just want to give the audience a sense of maybe the quick history of this country from your perspective as someone who's part of the CFA zone, and kind of what this means to you as someone who's a member of, really, I guess, what you would call the French monetary, union?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. I really appreciate it. Always, happy to share my thoughts and just insights on stuff that I kind of see happening in Africa in general. Yeah. So actually, funny enough, I don't know much about the Central African Republic, like as a country as a whole, because I've never personally been there. But growing up in Senegal, it was always these horror stories coming from there, because they had a dictator called Bokassa. And then when you were kids, when your parents want to threaten you, they always talk about like sending you to Bokassa's house, because apparently he'd like to collect children's heads. I'm not sure if it's true. I'm not sure if it's if it's really a reality. But yeah, but it was like really like a nightmare growing up, actually, and hearing about stories coming out of there, because he was a very brutal, actually, dictator who worshipped France and worshipped actually French monarchy, which is kind of really weird, actually. And he was in power for a very, very long time until he finally got pushed out, and he ended up dying in his castle in France, I believe, actually, which is really ironic. So when I first heard about like the news, like everybody else, I was really kind of skeptical, because we didn't hear nothing leading up to it. So I wasn't really sure if it was just fake news, or if it was just like people just trying to push articles out there and like trying to like stir up some um just I don't know, so I mean stir up some controversies or whatnot, or because it happened before, actually, in Senegal about like 4 or 5 years ago. There was an article that said that Senegal was about to release this e-cash, and it was really actually widely shared and actually publicized. But it turned out it was a totally fabricated story. So when I saw this one coming from what we call in French Centrafrique, I was like, well, maybe it's the same situation, because we haven't heard nothing about it anywhere in any news. The only basically publication that showed the article was something called Forbes that MC for I believe Monaco. So it couldn't possibly be true, because it came from this obscure pretty much blog site. But I ended up just talking to a friend of mine, actually, who grew up there and who ended up coming to Senegal to do his master's, and he kind of verified some of the information, but he wasn't quite sure. So it took me a couple of days to kind of like really get at the bottom of it. And I was like, okay, well, and talking to you as well, Gladstein, that really this is a reality. It's really happening today. And I'm really excited about it, because I never thought in my lifetime actually that I would see this happen, actually, honestly. Because as much as I'm bullish about Bitcoin, as much as I work on Bitcoin, I always treat it like the pyramids in Egypt, which means that we are building something that's truly revolutionary that will possibly outlive us, all of us, but we might not actually get a chance to see the results or the fruits of it, right? So same as the people who in Egypt who designed those pyramids. It took them about 1,000 years to basically build these things. But I'm sure they knew that they were not going to see the final result, but they still dedicated time and effort to design and build these things. So for me, like the same thing I want to see for Africa in general as well, because I know that I have a limited time on this planet, and I would like to see one day, like really the results of like really the efforts and the hard work, us, the community, and individually, all of the work we've been putting together as far as like trying to help like Africa come out of this rut that is in right now. So to see this happen though in this lifetime is very promising, and I think it opens up tremendous opportunities for West Africans. It opens up tremendous possibilities for us to finally circumvent this imperial currency they call the franc CFA, ultimately. And I think it's exciting times ahead. And I'm personally trying to get to Centrafrique as fast as possible. I'm headed to Oslo in a few weeks here with Gladstein. But my goal is to actually really head straight to CAR right after that. So I'm really excited.
Fode, when you read this bill, I mean, and it says that that Bitcoin, le Bitcoin, is going to
Yes.
be, the currency of the nation. I mean,
Mhm.
how does that make you feel?
Well, I'll be honest. I have like really mixed feelings about that, to be honest, right? Because I just got back from El Salvador just to kind of see. I went right after actually the conference, because I was there about a year ago, or like 7, 8 months ago, after the Bitcoin conference in 2021, and I went there right before they passed the law and stayed for a while. And I wanted to go back again and actually see how things were on the ground or whatnot, right? So I was really disappointed because I didn't see as much adoption on the ground, that I was hoping for, like after a few months, basically, right? So I wasn't sure if it just like really it's because of misinformation, miseducation, or the lack of information per se. I should say, So is the same thing going to happen in this particular country? I really had this kind of worries actually, actually a bit, right? But then again, I go back to saying that Bitcoin is still fairly young. It's still a teenager, right? It's about like 12 years old or so. And I think we haven't really figured it out, like somehow, like the true applications of it, right? And I think it will take for more places actually, for more adoption, for more experimentation, and for more building, for us to figure out actually really what will stick and how can we best to use this technology itself, right?
Yeah. So, and we're going to hopefully get Clement up here to
Mhm.
break it down from what he's seen. But just to refresh the audience, this bill passed on the 22nd. This is a country that obviously, as Fode is saying, has been through a lot. It had a string of historically infamous dictators going up through the early 2000s. The current leader of the country is not a dictator, is someone who was elected in a process that was praised by even groups like the UN as kind of bringing order back to the country. But I think it's important for us to understand that this is a first of all, a small country that's just been through a lot. Clement, can you hear us?
Yeah. Hello, everyone.
Amazing. Okay, well, let's just get to it. If you can hear us, give us your personal background. How did you wind up in Bangui, and what kind of stories have you been covering over the last few years?
So I'm a journalist that's been in Bangui for about a year and a half right now, and I've been covering all kind of stories, mostly related to the dire humanitarian situation here in the Central African Republic, but also related to the security situation, since the country, has been at war, civil war, since a few decades now, and a new wave of that civil war started just about a year ago.
Can you give us like just a quick overview of the humanitarian crisis and who are the actors in the civil war and who are the kind of foreign proxies involved?
Sure. So when you're talking about the Central African Republic, you have about 5 million people as the total population. So the humanitarian crisis here represents about half of that population that is in dire need of humanitarian help, but also, in need of just food. Some people are lacking food at the moment in the country, including in Bangui, the capital. And when it comes to the who's taking part in the security crisis, there's of course the national troops with Russian allies, Russian allies, and Rwandan troops as well. But there's also against them there is armed groups, rebel groups that are a bit everywhere in the country at the moment, and fighting has been going on for about a year and a few months now, and it's still going on right now. So people are still being displaced, killed, and are still lacking food and um, basic stuff all over the country.
Bernard, would love to hear your reactions to what's happening here from what you're seeing in Nigeria.
Yeah, hey everyone. Hi Alex. I mean, for me, I'm still trying to, internalize this. It still seems surreal. From seeing the first post, I think Corey posted this, and then I went to the website. Forbes, Monaco. Just didn't look legit because I would never have guessed in a million years that. It's the Central African Republic that would make this significant move. For us in Nigeria, it's been I mean, we're just discussing the other day if this actually happened, what it means, what it meant for them, right? So it's first looking at the colonization by France, the CFA, and what it meant for other African countries to say, okay, look, maybe everyone has been looking to see what will happen with to El Salvador, to see maybe 6 months down the line, are they still doing this? Can we attempt it? And if we attempt it, what's it going to be like, right? So for us, it's really just watching and discussing how can we support them, right? This is the first move. They've made the first move. So now they're going to be dependent on the community. They're going to be dependent on Bitcoiners from other African countries and the whole world to really get behind them and, just help them do this, because what happens in situations like this is, apart from the IMF, from France, you also have, just general, just everyone coming with a crypto project all of a sudden say, hey, do this, do that, do this, do that, and not really focusing on, how they're gonna really liberate these people. Because if we look at the economic indices in that country, it's really, really poor, right? But then for them, they are one of these countries that are going to quickly find utility in this, because when you look at the announcements, talking about, making payments, talking about, just circumventing all of these capital controls around, it just makes a lot of sense that they're doing this. And honestly, I still haven't fully internalized this. I really want to travel there as soon as I can to, just go understand what is really happening. But I mean, it's exciting. It's exciting at the same time.
So just to fill in what I think Clement was telling me earlier, so hopefully he'll hop up and be able to give more detail. But just as a reminder, again, this is a country at civil war. There's a proxy war happening between the government, which is backed by the Russians and the Rwandans, and then just a whole bunch of rebel groups. This is a country that's bordering Darfur. There are millions of people who are displaced. As he said, there are people who, something like I think 90% of the people don't have access to electricity. If you just think about that for a second, only 10% or so people have access to internet or could conceivably use Bitcoin. It's interesting to look at the process here. Again, the leader of the country is not a dictator, but and doesn't have control over the whole country, obviously. But there's concerns around the government. Obviously, there's concerns around low turnout around elections. And I was hoping Clement could fill us in, hopefully, a little bit more on the sort of the proceedings. But this bill has been debated basically for a month there, and it passed unanimously. But I think that's a little misleading, because some of the opposition, this actually wasn't like El Salvador, where it was just sort of pushed through in a day or whatever. There was a whole month apparently of back and forth, and it did pass quote unquote unanimously. But I think a lot of the opposition politicians who didn't support it just sort of weren't there the day when the vote happened. But in any event, there are, the same criticisms that you see in El Salvador are at play here. Most people won't be able to use it. It's going to be an opportunity for scams, which we'll get into. And people just don't really understand. The average person doesn't really understand why this has been done. So I think there's some interesting positives and some interesting things to be concerned about. So we appear to have Clement back in, so hopefully he'll join. And I want to get his thoughts on the actual bill itself and how it came to be. But just wanted to set the stage for you all in terms of the data of just how kind of underdeveloped this country is. Again, second least developed country in the world, and very much a sort of a sad outcome of the colonial French system. So we'll get him in here. But again,
Alex.
Hey, what's up?
I guess I'm kind of curious. You wrote, and for many Bitcoiners, you're the first person that really educated many people about this CFA franc system.
Yeah.
And that was less than a year ago. I think it was September 21 when you wrote about it. I guess
it was in. I think it was in June, but yeah.
Sorry, June. Okay, so but I guess what is it like writing about this thing, and then less than a year, one of the countries within that block is adopting Bitcoin, and you were one of the first people that suggested that Bitcoin could be a good solution.
Yeah, I mean, it's surreal because I just spent a lot of time at the suggestion of Fode and friends looking at the history of the colonial franc, which like obviously was something that was under discussed in international politics, but the TLDR is that the French government controls the economic fate of 180 million people through the currency. So people in 15 African countries still use a French system, which is ultimately still controlled by Paris and its proxies. It used to be more directly controlled through Paris. Today, it's controlled kind of a little more indirectly. But the point is that people in these countries want to resist this system. Maybe not the leaders. The leaders tend to be dictators who are supported by the French government. But people have been starting to push out and trying to create resistance movements to get away from this system. So I think that if anything, the fact that this is happening, regardless of the intentions, and we'll get to like what we, why we think this happened in a second, but the impact is going to be pretty huge because all of a sudden people across the whole CFA zone are going to be talking at a higher rate about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. And I think that's going to have some positive effects. I mean, people are kind of forced to reckon with it. And it's just astonishing to think about the fact that this currency that was invented by somebody that we don't even know who they are, not that long ago is now the currency, of yet another nation. It's just kind of a surreal thing. But as far as like the bill itself, so I would encourage people to actually look at the bill. The bill is, I don't, and again, I'm not sure, and I guess we have Ulamid up on the stage here, who I'll get to in a second. But in my opinion, the bill is like unworkable. So what's interesting about the bill is that the bill refers to Bitcoin kind of at the outset. But then throughout the amendments of the bill, it talks about cryptocurrency or like crypto money in French. But essentially, like what's interesting about the bill is it basically says that, from what I can understand, and again, hoping to get Clement's thoughts on this, is that it says that debts in the country basically have to be repaid by repaid by in cryptocurrency, and that the central bank has to convert cryptocurrency to legal tender. And the worrying thing here is there's a guy who apparently helped push this through, a business guy from the region who's super shady and has had like a lot of Ponzi schemes, basically. There's worries that like he pushed this through and that he made it so that even though it's a Bitcoin kind of law, that there's like it's defined as cryptocurrency loosely. So what does that mean? That this guy can just create a whole bunch of tokens and then go to the central bank and redeem them for CFA francs? Like, it's a little strange here. So I don't know if Clement is back here. Clement, can you hear us?
Seems like he's having a lot of issues.
Yeah, it's okay. We'll be patient. Hopefully he'll pipe back in later. But Clement, just speak up anytime that you can, and we'll come back to you. We have to be patient, as his troubles are indicative of the country and the fact that the internet is so bad there. But anyway, I would encourage people to look at the actual bill and start to understand that, like, as is, it's not really workable. I mean, maybe it ends up being de facto the law of the land in the coming months, but like the bill itself was clearly, not well put together and doesn't make a lot of sense in as much as it doesn't define what cryptocurrency is. Like, what does that actually mean? Does that mean Shiba Inu coin? Does that mean what? Like, it's really strange. I guess so. Olamide, do you want to weigh in on this at all? I know you're up on the stage with us. Go ahead, man.
Yeah. So I listened to all your analysis and, very interesting. But, as an African and a stakeholder in the crypto space in Africa, I'll tell you that apart from the fact that the CAR adoption of Bitcoin looks to be more symbolic, it tends to be systemic. Now, the narrative is that the Central African Republic is a poor country. I beg to differ that, because you need to understand that this is a country that is very rich with mineral resources, despite their GDP falling about $5 billion and is ranked around 163 in the world in terms of wealth standing. It means that, there have been conflicts and weak institutions in play. We see colonial powers and foreign powers trying to sway on those resources. And that is why the countries tend to be poor. And if you look at internet penetration also, because of weak institutions and the lack of stability, we can't see the things we see in other African countries. But having said that, I think it's not just symbolic. They've seen the importance Because if you take the case of Nigeria, for example, Nigeria happens to be Africa's biggest economy, home to 200 million people. And if you look at statistics, despite the fact that Nigeria has political instability, growing challenge, geopolitical uncertainty, and some form of overpopulation, Nigeria seems to be topping the crypto market in terms of retail users around the world. And that's because of the remittance uses. Bitcoin has attracted so many Nigerians. Apart from Salvador, that's because they have a pro-president that supports, pro-Bitcoin president. Despite Nigeria's institutions don't really support the crypto market, but that hasn't deterred Nigerians. So that has trickled to African countries. A lot of people forget that. Then another thing you need to also understand is that 1 in every 3 Africans is Nigerian. So that has also really pushed Bitcoin adoption across Africa in a very aggressive way. Because trust me, a lot of Africans use crypto markets. So that's why you see big labels like FTX, Binance, Crypto.com setting bases here. They understand the systemic adoption that's coming in the market. Now, if you look at Paxful, for example, Paxful came in 5-6 years ago. Nigeria is the biggest market in the world. So what I'm just trying to tell you is that while we are focusing on the poverty, or we're focusing on the French grip on CAR, I think we're losing the context of why Bitcoin is gripping the African continent. And it's just the start, because if you look at the technology, if you look at the number of developers coming from that continent alone, statistics suggested last year alone that the amount of money that came from crypto sponsored projects to Africa was in billions of dollars. And that just tells you that the traction is building up, and the momentum, despite the fact the market looks like is moderating, the attention is really getting a lot of bubble from young people, because on the average, crypto developers earn more than many professionals in the African continent. So I think we should look at the dynamics the Bitcoin has really done in CR. And like I said, it would be really pretty much unfair to look at the fact that the nation is really poor based on their outputs and look inward, not forgetting inward that this country has so many resources. And that's why you could see the French trying to make a grip on the country. So I think if there's stability, if the Africans can really start to get their actions together, the geopolitical uncertainty reduces. And because we have a pretty much young population, I think the dynamics will help the crypto market. And that's why Bitcoin is having that grip in Africa. So I felt like highlighting those points.
Yo, what is going on, plebs? We're going to take a break from our programming to tell you about the resurrection of our print magazine, starting with the El Salvador issue. Starting this fall, Bitcoin Magazine will be available on newsstands nationwide and at retail stores such as Barnes & Noble. Don't want to get off your couch, though? No problem. You can also go to store.bitcoinmagazine.com. So skip the line and get each issue shipped directly to your front door with our annual subscription. I'm talking 4 issues a year that contain exclusive interviews and profiles with leading Bitcoiners, actionable insights on the state of the market, breaking news and cultural trends, along with powerful photos and artwork from the best artists in the world. Subscribe today and get 21% off using code podcast at checkout. That's PODCAST, podcast at checkout.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm working on getting Clement just
So
on
I got
my
him.
phone, and I'll put him on speaker. But
I got
would
him,
love to go back
Alex.
to you. Oh, you got him? Okay, great. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think I can speak now, and it should work fine.
Okay,
that
perfect. That's amazing. Thank you so much, TK. So, Clement, just going back to the background of the bill, we kind of covered the humanitarian situation, the lack of internet penetration. When did you first start hearing about the bill, and can you talk to us about what's been happening the last few weeks?
So we first heard about the bill a few months ago when a specific businessman that lives in Cameroon, the country next door, started to talk about crypto in the CR, and it's a topic that was never on the table with politicians, even less with the populations, because no one, you've talked about the lack of internet, but no one has electricity, as a smartphone, or as the internet is way too expensive here, and you've been trying to get me this evening, and the internet is super bad. So yeah, the bill, the development of this bill seems quite shady, because it's linked to a specific businessman that lives in Cameroon and made some shady investments, made some weird contacts with the president as well, and has been already accused of trying to scam people on the continent, in the region, in Sierra, in Cameroon, as well, by international authorities, by individuals, by companies also. So it's really a shady case on how this bill really came to be.
And can you talk about the back and forth between the opposition and the civil society and the government, and how did it come to pass sort of unanimously?
So it didn't quite pass unanimously because the opposition, there was 3 deputies from the opposition that were actually part of the commission to develop this bill. There was a special commission that was put in place to try and develop a bill that would try and be passed next at the National Assembly. But the opposition deputies, it seems like they realized during the process that maybe it wasn't really transparent, maybe it wasn't what they expected. So they left the commission before the final report of that commission to develop this bill was on the table for the National Assembly to vote. And now they've communicated, they're protesting, because this bill isn't what they wanted, and they're saying that it could lead to money laundering, tax evasion, this sort of stuff.
What about the civil society? When you say civil society, what do you mean? You mean like independent media? I mean, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so civil society is association, organizations of people in the Central African Republic that think that sometimes publish opinions, and some opinions are very rare to find because the freedom of speech here is very relative. But so some of those organizations that are politically motivated are also protesting against this bill, saying it won't do anything for the regular Central African, because people here don't have smartphone, don't have internet or electricity, and that is mostly just for the 1% in the government, and that it probably won't be used anytime soon for a proper use by the people, and that it would only be used for purposes that are quite illegal on the international scale.
Yeah. So when you're looking at the bill itself and the different articles, like, do any of them seem particularly surprising to you? I mean, I know that you and I were talking about 22 and 23, which make it seem like that like debts could be repaid with quote unquote cryptocurrency, that the central bank would have to redeem cryptocurrency for francs. Like, what, I guess in your mind, this bill is not really workable. What do you think's going to happen in the next few months? I mean, do you think this will fizzle out, or do you think that it'll get basically modified and kind of tightened up?
So my opinion is that the bill will probably stay the same, even though the opposition has put it forward to the Constitutional Council that should say if it's a constitutional bill or not, and maybe make some changes. But I think most articles aren't. CR doesn't have the infrastructure; they don't have the network to really put in place those specific types of transactions, of insurance, and even they're planning on creating an agency that should regulate all the exchanges, but I don't think that will happen anytime soon because it's a really complex thing to do. So maybe, in a few years, but at the moment the country is in very much dire state, and it's not the financial priority to put this system in place. So for me, it won't be in place before, years.
Now, do you think that, I guess the question is, if you're a business and you're doing something like remittance or commerce with a neighboring state, that this bill would make it like maybe easier for you or less, let's say less unclear if you're trying to do business and you don't want to deal with the exchange with the CFA franc, like maybe you just want to use Bitcoin or stable coins or something. I guess that's the optimistic view. The negative view would be that this was rigged up by this guy that you mentioned, this kind of Ponzi scheme architect, and that maybe he just did this so that he can, he and the government can kind of, essentially launch a bunch of corrupt schemes and then get paid out at the expense of the citizenry. I mean, what are your thoughts on these two opinions?
I think the first opinion is very valid. It could be really good for the country and future investments and business people that want to invest in the CR and for everyone really that has CFA franc, it's much better to trade in crypto in the CR because it's really hard to get money in out and to do exchange with the CR and outside of the CR, but. For sure, this bill was developed in very weird conditions, so I think there's probably a shady part to it. But it could translate to real improvements on the transaction side. But at the moment, the country is very much lacking infrastructure to do this, and most people here, even I would say even people that have a stable job that have like medium revenues don't really know about crypto. They don't know what it is. Most people here, don't use internet at all. So it would take a few years. I think it's good to have a legal ground to organize all of this, but we would have to see if there's a political will to actually put in place all of those things, or if it's just a big scam, and if it was pushed by the government with a specific purpose.
So there's been a lot of speculation about this Twitter account that's popped up of the president. You were telling me that the presidency told you it's real, and that you've basically been getting information from them. Can you just talk about that? Like that you were telling me you think that the Twitter account is real, but it's just kind of maybe like mismanaged or something.
Yes, so we have confirmation that the Twitter account was real. It was created, I think, just a few weeks ago, maybe a week ago. But so far, there's been a lot of tweets that are just about cryptocurrency. So that seems super weird to us because there's a lot of other issues like diplomatic issues. There's a lot of news in the CR, a lot of reactions that are expected from the president other than just talking about cryptocurrency. Also, when I was talking about mismanaged, it's mostly that people have mocked online this Twitter account because there's so much, bad, there's bad spelling. Some sentences don't even make much sense. And unfortunately, it's the president's account, so it should be really clean and use some really complex sentences and some
so the
sentence, but it's not the case.
So the truth is stranger than fiction here. I mean, do you think there's a small group of people basically who's using this account on behalf of the president, or like how knowledgeable do you think he is about this bill and the statements? Do you feel like from what you've seen his office is actually supporting this, or is this something that's being kind of like done without their knowledge?
No, I think his office and himself are supporting the bill, and I think it's done with his knowledge because it's done simply with his signature. The bill was signed by him, and it chose to communicate about it in a very strong manner on an international scale as well. The story has blown up, and it seems to tweet about this because it's getting a lot of attention as well, or at least his team. So at the moment, I think it's just bad sentences, bad formulation, and maybe they're putting forward a story, a narrative. This specific communication team that shouldn't be put forward because that's not what the people here in CA already expect from the president. They expect a much better communication about just other topics than this one.
Yeah, I mean, look, you're going to get a ton of interest and engagement from the world in the coming months that just didn't exist before. So again, maybe some good can come of it. In the West African countries that are under the CFA franc, there's like resistance movements against it. Is there any resistance against the franc and the sort of the colonial franc in the CAR, or is it not really something that's a political movement there?
So the political movements about this are very small in the CAR at the moment. I think there's some people that aren't happy with the CFA franc. Of course, there's been a lot of projects to create, a unified currency, and I think it's those are really good projects. They should be put in place. But there's no real political movements at the moment to end the CFA franc in the Central African Republic, and there is certainly no movements at all, no political movements at all in the population in general to replace the CFA franc with a cryptocurrency, just because people won't be able to use it before decades, I would say, in the CER, because the infrastructures are just not here to even be able to connect people.
Can you give us some details about Russia's involvement? We know that France withdrew troops recently. I mean, would it be fair to say that France is kind of withdrawing its influence in a way, whereas Russia's moving in? Can you talk about the Wagner Group and how it works with the president?
So there is some issues that I won't talk about. I can talk about France really withdrawing from the country for sure. They had a military operation there until 2016, and when they withdrawn, Russia basically took their place with military support, paramilitary support, and this support has threatened, has been much bigger recently, because there was a new wave of violence, and Russia helped the Sierra to get out of this specific wave of violence at the moment. So that's basically all I can say. And France is definitely losing ground. There wasn't, recent withdrawing of troops, because there was no troops. There was a recent withdrawing of funding from France following accusation, by the UN and other NGOs of violations of human rights by national army and paramilitaries. But it wasn't troops. It wasn't French troops withdrawing. It was just support, some military support withdrawing, some military formations withdrawing, and some budget aid withdrawing as well.
Now, as far as Russia's involvement, like, why would they be there? I mean, can you talk about some of the natural resources that are in this small country? Like, why is it of strategic interest to foreign powers?
So the Sierra has always been a strategic country for a lot of foreign powers. It has been for France for decades and decades, and even centuries at that point. But so a lot of countries are involved here, and I won't speak about Russia specifically, but they're involved here to access some natural resources, including mines that are really hard to access to. Actually, it's been the country has been of interest for a lot of countries, but none has been able to really make profit out of it, or really build a stable mining exchange system or industry here, because it's really hard with armed groups. So it's still really unstable at the moment. But yes, foreign powers, as Russia, are really interested and attracted towards Central African Republic at the moment.
You were saying that half the countries in a humanitarian crisis, from what we understand, only about, again, 10% have access to the internet, only about 10 to 15% have access to the grid, electricity. Can you just, I mean, I assume you've obviously trekked around a little bit. I mean, can you talk to us about what life is like outside of the capitals, and what people are dealing with?
Yes, so the humanitarian situation here is really dire at the moment. So you can imagine 2.5 million people, so half the population is in lack of food. Humanitarian aid is definitely not enough to save everyone. People don't have access to food, to clean water. They don't have access to health centers. They don't have access to healthcare, and people live with very little money every day. Even here in the capital, Bangui, there's maybe 1% or even less of people that can actually afford, if we go back to the topic, they can actually afford a smartphone, for example. So life is really tough in the CR for everyone. And when you go out of the capital, there's really nothing. There's no infrastructure. There's no internet in most places. Actually, there's no antennas, and you're lucky to get a signal in the major cities outside of the capital. So no infrastructures at all, or very little infrastructure. No roads. There's actually just a few paved roads here in Bangui, but mostly just dirt roads all over. So yeah, at the moment, no one is really talking about, at least in the country, is really talking about crypto.
Yo, my fellow Bitcoin lovers, have I got something specifically curated for you? The Deep Dive is Bitcoin Magazine's premium markets intelligence newsletter. This isn't some paid group shilling buy and sell signals. No, this is a premium Bitcoin analysis led by Dylan LeClaire and his team of analysts. They break down in an easily digestible way what is happening on chain, in the derivatives markets, and in the greater macro backdrop context for Bitcoin. This newsletter turns volatility into a joke. So hit up members.bitcoin.magazine.com and use promo code podcast for 30% off the deep dive. That's members.bitcoinmagazine.com, promo code podcast for 30% off. Divorce your pay group and learn why Bitcoin is the strongest asset by Dylan and LeClaire and his team.
One more question, then I want to turn it over to Fode to allow him to ask some questions of you as someone who was born, into the CFA zone. But can you talk about the money piece? Like currently, you were saying maybe this law could be the beginning of something that eventually may impact people positively because of, I guess, how broken it is. But like if you need to send a payment to France or to the United States, like I assume this isn't so easy. Can you talk a little bit about kind of how problematic, I guess, the money system is today?
It's super problematic for everyone in the Central African Republic, especially because people, at least here in the capital, can often live off money that is sent by the people who actually live outside of the country. We call it the diaspora here, maybe it's the same in English, but so they have a member of the family that's in Europe and they want to send money, but it's really tough. You have to use sometimes Western Union, there's Express Union and other services, but it's really expensive. So people lose a lot of money doing that. It takes a long time as well. You need papers. Sometimes there's mistakes. Sometimes there's thief. And the banks here are very isolated. The CR is a very isolated country because of all the crises it went through. So for people here, it's really, really tough to get money, to send money, and also just to do business. If you go a bit outside of the everyday life, if you want to invest here, bring money, or live with money, it's super hard, very, very complicated, and crypto could definitely try to make that part of the Central African life a bit better if people had access to infrastructure and smartphones and internet.
What's the do you have roughly speaking, how much would it cost to rent a 1-bedroom apartment in Bangui, or what is the daily wage in CFA? Do you have any rough ideas, rough numbers for us?
So per month, I have to convert in my head really quick, but per month, some people would get between $50 and $100 per month. That would be the regular wage for people that are maybe functionaries that work in administrations and stuff. Maybe they'll get $100 a month if they're lucky. And it's a complex question because there's the UN mission here as well. There's a lot of NGOs. So for expats here, for international people, the rent is very expensive because it's really hard to get.
So $100 a month.
In Bangui, but for regular people, it's not that expensive to get a house, but it's still a big part of the salary. I would say you can get a house per month in most neighborhoods for about $30.
Last thing, the IMF has recently spoken out, Clément, about this and sort of said they're not so sure about this. You were saying that that's going to be a serious topic at the government level, and that maybe the opposition is worried that some of the aid that is necessary to feed people will be cut off. Do you want to talk about that at all?
Sure. So it might be a huge problem indeed, because most so the IMF and most international donors to the CER, which is half of the national budget here, are very suspicious of this law. They think it could be for money laundering, scams, and all of this. So they don't want to put money and to send a lot of money in a country where it can easily get out, easily be lost, easily transferred with very little control, and it already has very limited. They already have very limited control on that money. So I don't think they see this law as something that makes the situation better. at all in the Central African Republic, at least as international donors.
Fode, do you have any questions of Clément?
Oh, sure. Actually, I just Clément, merci beaucoup pour everything, man. Pour tout quoi. I hope to see you there, like out there soon. Well, my only question actually is that what do you think has been the reception from financial institutions like banks and such? Has it been positive, or have they been quiet? Because I've been looking online and I couldn't really quite see how they received that the news basically about the Bitcoin legal tender. What do you think, like, the overall feeling is?
I don't think there's not a lot of French-based banks in the country at the moment. It's mostly regional banks, and I mean they didn't react so far because it's so new, and a lot of people have heard about this bill being passed, but not a lot of people actually thought that this bill would pass so quickly and that we would talk about it so quickly. So far, no reactions. I don't think it will change much for them at the moment. But if the government starts to implement new protocols and stuff, they probably won't be happy because it's already very complex for them to operate in Central Africa and in the Central African Republic. So, but I'll have to check their reactions later.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bernard, do you have any questions of Clément while we have him?
No, I don't. I think you've asked the questions I would have asked. Good. Thank you, Clément.
Awesome. Well, look, thank you, Clément, so much for your time. This has been really great. It's really nice for us to hear from someone there. Obviously, just to repeat, to conclude for the audience, this is real. The bill is real. The Twitter account is real. This is happening, but we're just not sure about the impact because so few people have access to the internet. I guess the charitable perspective would be that it could be the start of something that could be really helpful for many people because this financial system is so broken and so kind of corrupted by middlemen and by fees and by unworkable different currencies that maybe an open source permissionless currency that would be equal for everybody would over time make a difference. And I think that's why most of us are here. But I think we need to be clear that the person who pushed this law most likely was someone with like shady business interests. And maybe Clément, what happens is maybe the bill gets clarified to maybe Bitcoin and virtual dollars or something a little more clear, because right now the bill is just like so wide open that it really does leave room for scams, because if crypto money or whatever is going to be something that needs to be dealt with at the national level, that someone like me I just feel like that's definitely going to be a problem. So I don't know, do you have any closing thoughts for us? Again, very grateful for your time.
I know. Thanks for summing that up. I think it's pretty good. So yeah, this bill could make the situation better here, but really no one in the international community or no other countries or individuals or businessmen should expect this bill to be implemented anytime soon. There could be shady business going on with it because it's so wide open. We've seen that it's really, really open. I don't think it will get modified. It will probably stay as it is, and we'll see in the years to come, what comes out of this bill. But I mean, so far it's really hard to say, and it's really hard to imagine people here in the Central African Republic actually using crypto anytime soon.
Well, again, thank you. We'll be following you for updates. One last thing I thought I'd throw out there was that the country, I think, is half powered by hydro resources for whatever electricity they do have. The rest, I believe, is diesel, essentially. But something to keep an eye on. Certainly, if there are people listening who want to find a way to help. I mean, I think the interesting thing, Clément, is like what this bill does offer is like ways for people to help. I mean, before this bill, let's put it this way, most people had never heard of this country and probably would live the rest of their lives without ever hearing it. But now you're going to have a lot of people worldwide who've heard about it and who are interested. And look, some of those people are going to carry through with actual good intentions and they're going to bring commerce and they're going to bring capital, and it's going to be interesting. So we really look forward to hearing from you on what's going on the ground. And again, thank you so much for your time. And I appreciate the audience here for battling with us through these the internet issues. Thank you, CK, you're a champ for getting Clément on your phone. Again, we'll be following you. Thank you all so much for coming. And CK, I don't know if you want to pitch anything here at the end, but yeah, thank you.
Thanks, everyone. No, appreciate Alex for organizing this. Very, very informative. You got people on the ground, and I can tell that a lot of Bitcoiners were really eager to learn firsthand good information. So really appreciate you in the community.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Clément. We'll see you guys later. Take care. Thank you, Fode. Thank you, Bernard.
Thanks again.